Hello audience. In this video I'm going to dig out the old truck and get it running. And here it is. It's been sitting here for probably the better part of a year, and nature is slowly reclaiming it, so it's probably time to dig it out and see if it still runs. And now I got the other car stuck. But the good news is I got it out of the weeds now, so I can work on it at least. First problem, it has a flat tire. Okay, the inner tube's not holding. Found another inner tube. It's the wrong size, but I think it'll work. Close enough. And the carburetor's missing. I must have borrowed it for another car. Everything else looks like it's here. Found it. It was inside the cab. Now we'll see if it has any fuel. Probably doesn't. Yep, nothing. Probably wouldn't be any good if it had any anyway. The battery's probably stone dead, but might be enough to power the ignition. Yeah, that's great. So it should fire right up. It's ready to drive now. Now the first thing I need to do is get this out of the way so I can back up the other car and get a running start to get that out of here, and then I can back this into the driveway. So this is my Model TT truck. Now, it pretty much is a piece together, so the model year is kind of arbitrary. I call it 1918 because I think that's what the frame started out as. I wasn't really looking for a TT truck at the time when I bought this. The only reason I bought it was because it was cheap. I paid $600 for it, and granted, at the time, it didn't have a cab on it, and it had a truck rear axle, and every part in it was worn out and or broken. The previous owner bought it from a vineyard in Napa Valley, and that's about all I know from its backstory. Now, he bought it for the same reason I did, because it was cheap, and then discovered it was way more work than he wanted to work on, so he sold it and I got it. Originally, I bought this just for parts, but it was kind of running and driving, and it was registered, so I started driving it, and surprisingly, it started proving itself valuable just as a truck. I've never really had much of a plan on what to do with this, so everything I've done has been really low budget with a limited amount of work. The two really big upgrades, or modifications, whatever you want to call it, that I did with this is I made the cab for it, and I replaced the rear axle. From the hood forward is what was on the truck when I got it. The cowl section and the windshield, as you may have guessed, are for a 1917 to 22-ish open car, and the rest of it is handmade. The top irons are the back half of a touring car set, and the header is homemade. I made a few mistakes making this. The biggest one is the cab is too short, so there's no room for the backrest, which is pretty much the reason why I don't drive this, but I've got some ideas on how to modify that. Also, the top brackets are falling off, so I need to redesign those, and hopefully I'll get around to doing that sometime. Now, like I said, when I got it, it had a truck rear axle, and every part in it was broken and or worn out. I found a few extra parts, but I couldn't get enough to actually get it working, and it was a really low ratio anyway. This one was geared 725 to 1, which gives you a cruising speed of about 18 miles per hour. So I didn't have much interest really in saving it anyway. It now has a Model A passenger car rear axle, which is why it has Model A wheels on it. It also has a Model A rear spring, and I made a cross member for the frame to hold the U-joint housing. And I'm also using the stock Model A rear brakes on it. From the front, it's mostly 17 to 22 parts, with the exception being the radiator. This is from like a 24-25, I think, because it's way too tall. It also doesn't fit the shell. The shell's been modified for it. The hood has also been modified. Now, it didn't have hood sides when I bought it. It just had the tops and a rope holding it down. I made these just to make it look a little more complete. I plan to eventually get the proper radiator for this and restore the radiator shell and get a better hood for it. I haven't done that yet because the radiator it has works just fine, and I have a hard time justifying replacing a part that has nothing wrong with it. Now, because it has a Model A rear axle and Model A wheels, the spindles have been remachined to fit Model A wheel bearings, so it also has Model A wheels on the front. That's why it has brake drums up front, but no brakes. The rest of the front suspension is stock Model T. I was thinking about putting a Model A front axle under this, but it might just be more work than it's worth. This has always been really loose, like it's about to fall off, but it never does. The steering column, which is the one that was on it when I got it, the length has been adjusted several times and it's way too short, which is why I have the steering wheel on backwards, because if I put it on normally, the steering wheel is where my knees are supposed to be. So that's something I need to fix sometime. Also equipped with this truck when I got it was it had a Ward's auxiliary transmission. As you can tell by the shifter, it has an underdrive, a direct drive, overdrive, and a reverse. Why it has a reverse gear, I don't know, but I generally use it for backing up because it's easier than pressing down the middle pedal. Now here's the rear axle. Now the spring, the rear cross member is bigger and has a different shape than the spring, so I made an adapter to go in between here that fits the spring perfectly. And the U-bolts are the same ones for holding the old truck spring, they're just relocated. And here's the U-joint housing. As you can see, I have a stock Model A brake cross shaft to operate the brakes. This is the cross member I made. I made it out of just scrap metal angle. The stock Model A U-joint housing bolts onto that. And here's the auxiliary transmission. And there's the regular transmission. Now this part here is why I'm kind of hesitant to talk about this conversion. Now this is the back of the transmission. This is a stock Model T U-joint. There's a stock Model A U-joint back there. And I have a homemade drive shaft to go between them. The biggest problem is on a modern U-joint, they're really precise because they hold the weight of the drive shaft. Neither of these are, because the drive shaft is supposed to be held by a bearing, so it's really loose and it clanks around at low speed. At high speed, centrifugal force centers it and it works okay, but I really should think of a better idea at some point. It's powered by a stock 1919 Model T engine. Even though it's made for a generator, I don't have one on it. I also don't have a starter either, so it's crank only. The magneto doesn't work, so I power everything with a old 12-volt car battery. I'll probably upgrade some of this stuff eventually, but for the time being, the engine runs pretty good, and it's been very reliable. And now I'll take it for a drive and see what happens. Well, it still runs and drives. I didn't drive it very far because I only have about a gallon of fuel in it, and I don't know how long the battery's going to last. It's a little bit out of tune and needs some adjusting, but it still runs and drives. And I've forgotten just how much fun this is to drive on the highway. Hopefully sometime soon I'll get back to work on this and make it a little better to drive. But anyway, that's it for this video. So I'm going to end this with a bunch of scenes of this truck in action from about a year ago that I filmed for a video that I never made.